Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord, also known as Handsome Göring, or authority figure Alexei Sayle, apart from having the most comically German name of all time, is mostly remembered for an amazingly pithy description of how to run an organization. He was talking about the German army, because he was in charge of it at the time, but it can be applied to just about anything. I divide my officers into 4 groups. There are clever, diligent, stupid, and lazy officers. Usually 2 characteristics are combined. Some are clever and diligent. Their place is the general staff. The next lot are stupid and lazy. They make up 90% of every army and are suited to routine duties. Anyone who's both clever and lazy is qualified for the highest leadership duties, because he possesses the intellectual clarity and composure necessary for difficult decisions. One must beware of anyone who's stupid and diligent. He must not be entrusted with any responsibility because he will always cause only mischief. Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord was the subject of one of my history shorts. Side note, but I do history shorts, where every week I tell you about an interesting person, event, thing, book, film, or myth from history. So if you really wish I did more history stuff, just check out the shorts. Anyway, often there's not enough time to include everything interesting about a subject in a short, so occasionally, like 3 times so far, I do an extended version where I make a full-length video. A history long, if you will.
Oh my.
If you're one of the few people to watch this, then you're probably aware, but I previously done longs on Tom Harrison, the English academic who brought headhunting back to Borneo as a weapon against the Japanese occupation in World War II, and Dorothy Gibson, the silent movie star who survived the Titanic, only for her story to get much twistier from there. This time we're talking about Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord, who really should be more well known as the OG Hitler hater. In an army where it turns out that a lot of people would end up trying to kill Hitler, no one did it as early and as openly as Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord. If there was a patron saint of Hitler killing, this would be the man. But before I begin, you know the drill: like, sub, hit bells, leave comments if you want more videos like this, and check out the Patreon if you're able and you want to support more directly. Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord is the single most impressive anti-Nazi that you've probably never heard of. I mean, I've seen the numbers on the history short I did about him. He was born in 1878 in Waldeck, Germany, the first of many places and names that I'm going to pronounce terribly. But to be fair, I also do that in English. He was from a noble family. The von in his name is a class signifier. It means from, explaining where his family has or had land. Like a lot of upper-class men of his time, he was career army, starting with cadets aged 10 and joining the army proper aged 15, and an officer by 20. As a younger officer, he served alongside and became lifelong friends with Kurt von Schleicher, the last chancellor of the Weimar era, who'd be assassinated in the Night of the Long Knives. So Equord was destined to hate Hitler. Equord served with distinction during World War I, earning an Iron Cross. The Iron Cross was originally a Prussian military award, which became an all-German one when Germany unified in 1871. It was the highest military honour that Germany offered, but fell out of fashion after World War I, and then was completely got rid of as an honour after World War II. Can't think of why, but it's still a symbol of the German army. After World War I, the German army was not only forcibly but massively downsized to 100,000 men, the smallest it had ever been. Equord was one of the officers who kept his job, eventually becoming the head of what was left of the army in 1930. In the post-war period, Equord became known as the Red General, not because he was a communist or even particularly a socialist, but because he'd happily work and socialise with them, because of his daughter's communist connections, because he defended the new social democratic Weimar Constitution, and because he recognised the USSR as a country. He even spearheaded secret connections between the German and Soviet armies, joint training missions, etc. Not out of love for the Soviets, but because it was good for the army. I mean, they didn't have very much of an army, they needed all the help they could get. This all had the rather sad side effect of laying the groundwork for the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, but that happened years later. As the Nazis rose, he did not like what he saw, calling them nutcases, street thugs, a criminal gang, henchmen and perverts. To be fair, that was a bit of old-school homophobia because the only openly, proudly, flagrantly gay political figure in the world was Ernst Röhm, head of the Nazi SA.
Hitler had him killed early on, though, and had his SA replaced with the SS, becoming the classic Nazis that we know. Now, I have no idea what Equord thought of Rome's purging and all the gay people ending up in camps, but it didn't seem to have made him hate Hitler any less. So his homophobia is probably kind of light compared to his main hobby, hating Hitler and the Nazis.
As for Hitler, he called him an Austrian corporal, probably a reference to Napoleon's insulting nickname, the Little Corporal. But you know, Hitler was a corporal and Equord was an aristocratic officer, so it might have just been classism. The 1932 German elections were the turning point for a lot of things. Contrary to popular belief, the Nazis weren't voted into power.
As you can see in this picture here, the Virgin Hitler lost the presidential election to the Chad Hindenburg, and the Nazis didn't even manage a majority in the Reichstag, the Congress or Parliament.
Equord was concerned that Hitler would try another coup like his beer hall putsch in 1923, and he told him to his face that if he tried, he'd personally shoot him.
Turned out he wouldn't need to do a coup, though, because the presidential blimp, Hindenburg, decided to name Hitler as Chancellor.
Equord had warned him not to, that Hitler would be a disaster, that he'd bring Germany to ruin and would destroy the fledgling republic. And Hindenburg seemed to understand and told him that he wouldn't appoint Hitler. Hindenburg named Hitler Chancellor just 4 days later. So Equord made quick plans with von Schleicher to have the army seize power and decapitate the Nazi leadership. But Hindenburg made it clear that he would support Hitler. So Equord resigned. Why? Because Equord was a loyal officer, loyal to Germany, loyal to the Weimar Republic, and its president, Hindenburg. Now, of course, Hindenburg was dead within a few years, and Hitler soon united the role of Chancellor with the presidency in order to create a new office, the Führer, which Equord had no loyalty to. Equord resigned in 1933 and began his post-retirement hobby, fucking with the Nazis. He started small by resigning his membership to the Herren Club, a German gentleman's club, in protest of them kicking out non-Aryans,
i.e. Jewish people. He then tried to stop the Night of the Long Knives, but he was unable to reach Hindenburg in time.
He then openly attended the funeral of von Schleicher after his murder on the Night of the Long Knives. This was a massive deal because Hitler had banned all current and former army personnel from attending. He even got into a row with the SS who tried to stop him. From there, he graduated to hang out with the resistance and using his connections in the army to gather all the secrets he could leak. This was particularly important because he was able to give people advance warning of new crackdowns, letting people escape or hide in time. And not just Jewish people, journalists, anyone the Nazis were targeting. His daughter Maria even snuck some people into Switzerland in her motorcycle sidecar. When World War II broke out, he signed up for the army again and was placed in charge of a small force in Poland, where he developed his foolproof plan to kill Hitler. Alas, it turned out that Hitler wasn't quite a fool. By the end of the war, though, he was a blithering idiot. Anyway, he planned to pretend to be loyal, make the force as good as possible, invite Hitler to inspect the troops, and then shoot him in the face, and then himself in the head, I assume. Alas, he wasn't that good an actor. Eventually, he was forced to retire again. He had cancer. But he didn't stop his anti-Nazi efforts. If anything, he increased, by leaking more and more secrets. Even military secrets to the Russians via his daughters, who were full members of the communist resistance. Even though he knew he was under surveillance by the SS, he continued to voice his hatred for the regime, even to regime officers who visited him. He sent letters overseas and gave interviews where he warned about the still ramping up Holocaust. He also personally involved himself with multiple plots to assassinate Hitler, including what eventually became the failed 20th of July plot. 2 of his sons were also involved in that, and somehow survived. One of Equord's last meetings was with Udo von Alvensleben, who quoted in his diary, "I am ashamed to have belonged to an army that witnessed and tolerated all crimes."
The big irony is that Equord and Hitler both eventually reached the same conclusion, that Germany had to be destroyed by the Allies. Hitler, because it failed him and he wanted it to die with him, and Equord, so that no one else would dare try Nazism again.
Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord died in 1943, and because he was somehow still technically in good graces with the Nazis, they offered him an official funeral. Not quite a state funeral, but kind of close. The family, who were all members of the resistance by this point, turned them down, because it involved draping the coffin in a swastika. Instead, they opted for a small family funeral, which Hitler sent a wreath to, which was lost when the family accidentally misplaced it on the subway. After the 20th of July plot in 1944, the Hammerstein-Equords had to go on the run. Most of them managed to hide with the aid of the resistance, though one, Maria Theresa, the aforementioned daughter with the motorbike, was already safely in Japan. Equord's wife Maria and his youngest children weren't so lucky and were captured and sent to the camps, where they somehow survived. Possibly, like their patriarch, they were simply too high profile to kill. At least that's my guess about why the Nazis never killed Equord. It's realistically either that or they were afraid that the gravitational forces generated by his massive testicles would bend the bullets around him and back at them. The Equords, who all survived the war, except Kurt, their anti-Nazi efforts continued in the aftermath. Most notably, Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord spent years hunting Nazi war criminals. And that was the tale of Kurt von Hammerstein-Equord, called by Heinrich Brüning, the leader of the Centre Party, the only man who could remove Hitler. And yeah, pretty much. Personally, I feel that German anti-Nazi resistance is in many ways more interesting historically than the French or any other conquered group because the Nazis had so much more time to do their horrible shit to Germany. They were able to wipe out the obvious anti-Nazi forces, which made up the majority of the resistance in other places, which meant that the German anti-Nazi resistance was usually peopled with people that you wouldn't expect. People like Equord, an old-school, traditional, law-and-order conservative and literal aristocrat. And because he was all those things, it never even occurred to him to be subtle about any of this. He spent his life being in charge and being deferred to, and he faced Hitler with the same confidence. And it worked. The very definition of someone with privilege, using it not only for good, but for the best cause.
Equord failed. He failed at most truly important things he attempted. But he kept trying fearlessly, he never gave up, and he raised a whole family of heroes.
Anyway, if you watch the history shorts and you want to know more about anyone or anything covered, please just let me know. If I have more to say, I'll add them to the list.